For over 15 years, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by Play Now, the official sports betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets, starts now.
Final Saturday night home game of the regular season, 6 days away from the NHL trade deadline. There's plenty to discuss on this morning's edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show with Dave Manouk. With Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell, here for the next couple of hours, all about the Winnipeg Jets. As I mentioned, we got trade deadline. We got a game tonight. Plenty to discuss on this Saturday morning. The calendar has rolled into March the 1st. The playoffs are about 6.5 or so weeks away. Buckle up, folks. It's time to get silly. Gentlemen, good to see you both on this Saturday morning. How are things?
Things are pretty good. Again, I don't speak for Dave, but I think usually Dave and I are feeling the same positive vibes, right? And like you said, Drew, we've got 6 days before the trade deadline, and the playoffs are getting closer and closer. And, you know, I don't speak for you guys, but I'm pretty sure, well, that was a quick show for Dave.
Bye, Dave. He's never been better, never been more articulate, verbose, handsome, the whole 9 yards. Finally, the dead weight is gone, and Ginsburg and Mindell can drive this. Oh, shit, he's back.
Well, I was going to say Dave apparently wasn't doing as well as I am.
I was checking. It's funny. I was just checking my audio settings. I was like, okay, I want to make sure. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, and now I'm no longer in the chat. Okay. Dave has disappeared.
Yeah, well, it was a brief respite from you, but we welcome you back to the program.
I really just wanted to create a wave, to be honest with you. I was kind of like, I need to make a big entrance, as he tends to do a morning soliloquy. I'm like, how can I interject? So here you go.
By the way, none of us are doing as well as Al Broderick, who's joining us from Long Beach, California. So shout out to Al.
Yes, exactly. Nice to see everybody joining us wherever you may be all around the world. That's where you join into the Illegal Curve Hockey Show from. Game day today, 6 days away. As I was saying, lots to discuss. The Jets obviously losing Thursday night to the Nashville Predators. We don't really need to rehash that game very much. We all saw it. It was whatever. They weren't going to win every game for the remainder of the season. They ran into a hot goaltender. We'll see if they can bounce back tonight against the Philadelphia Flyers team that is certainly not playoff bound.
Dave, did Drew just yada over the Jets Predators game?
Well, I mean,
he did just yada.
You need to delve.
You're saying that the game was over,
just like the duck. I mentioned that the game was over.
You mentioned the Bisk.
Yeah, I mentioned the best part of it. The game was over. You know, I mentioned the best part of it. The duck. You know, things of that nature. The Flyers are again in town. They had dinner last night in Winnipeg. Something I didn't know was possible. We'll show you that photo if you guys haven't seen it later.
Now, hold on here, Drew. As folks in this chat know, you're a foodie, unlike Ezzy and I, who are content to just eat food.
Yes.
But did you
guys
recognize
are more foodies than foodies?
I don't even know what that means, but sure.
Foodie goody.
Oh, like
it was a restaurant. It was a buffet back in the day.
Well,
I had the worst D once after going there. Wow.
Anyways,
back in high school, I remember we went there.
It was an all-you-can-eat buffet on.
It was near Polo Park, right?
Yeah, exactly right.
And now it's Garbanzo's, I believe. Who aren't a sponsor of the show.
Go on, Dave. What were you saying?
So my question was, did you recognize? I saw your tweet. Did you know the place that they were having dinner?
It was a fancy steakhouse on Wellington Crescent.
It did look like 529. I wasn't sure. I thought it was, but I wasn't. I assumed based on your picture that's what it was.
Yeah,
but I wasn't certain.
No,
Okay,
I knew it. Yes, I was able to identify it quickly and you know send it. I sent it off to the folks at the Athletic so that they were aware that the next time a player says that there's no restaurants in Winnipeg, look, proven wrong here.
Remember, there's Manitobans on that team. They know where to go.
Yes.
You don't have to worry about that, right, Ezzy?
Yeah, and if I can tell a quick little story, it's not a great story, but it's a relevant story.
Again?
No, it's not about Footy Goody. When the Philadelphia Flyers were in town back in probably would have been the early to mid 90s, remember they used to stay at the Viscount Court because they played at the old Winnipeg Arena, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was with my dad and sister at Olive Garden, obviously a local treasure on Portage Avenue across from Polo Park. All you can eat breadsticks, soup and salad. Love it.
Not for you. They only give you a certain amount.
Yeah, and then I just asked them to put some breadsticks in a garbage bag, and then I'll leave. But yeah, and so they, there's that big room at Olive Garden, like the party room, and Eric Lindros was obviously, all of us, that was one of our favorite players back in the day. So I remember I mustered up some courage, and I asked somebody that worked for the Flyers, and I gave them a piece of paper, and they got all the Flyers to sign it in court. And including Eric Lindros. And I kept that piece of paper for a long time. I don't have it anymore. But anyways, that's just, I think, a relevant story. The Flyers are in town. Saw them at Olive Garden back in the mid-90s, right? I just thought I'd share that little anecdote.
Yeah, I mean, look, we were talking about the Flyers out at a restaurant. So, and look, it just goes to show you that they've upgraded from the Olive Garden to a 529 steakhouse.
That's right. Hockey-related revenues have gone up since then,
Yes.
so they can afford better restaurants.
There
And
you
that was
go.
an okay anecdote, Ezzy. I'll give you a little bit of credit there. In any event, the Jets and the Flyers later tonight. We'll get into that throughout the course of the next couple of hours. The trade deadline, though, 6 days away. Really quiet. Usually by now something has happened. We know that the Rantanen and Neckash deal happened a while ago. But that's
Well, what about the next Rantanen deal, Drew?
well, that's fine. Let's put that into the background for the time being. But a little quieter than usual, 6 days out from the trade deadline, I would say. So let me ask you guys this question.
Mm-hmm.
After Friday, let's say the trade deadline comes and goes. If the Jets haven't acquired a bona fide second line center, you will feel blank. Fill in the blank.
The same way that I feel after going to Footy Good.
I could see where as he was going with that. I was like, I'm pretty sure he's going to go there. But
Like, honestly, obviously, Drew had that question written down.
We're not getting better than that. That's it. Done. 8 minutes.
It showed this weekend, boys. I think I would be disappointed if Chevy doesn't acquire a 2C. Like, I've been thinking about this a lot, guys. Obviously, Nemesnikov, Perfetti, and Ehlers are arguably playing their best hockey of the season, right? Like, over the last several weeks, I think we'd all agree, specifically Perfetti, right? Like, Perfetti was somebody who, let's be honest, he was struggling quite a bit earlier in the season, and I don't think that's the case anymore. And by the way, I love to see it. I felt like I was the Perfetti defender when he was going through that pointless streak, that goalless streak. But and obviously Nikolai Ehlers is Nikolai Ehlers. He's consistent. He's always fantastic. So I mean, I think there's an argument to be made that you could go into the playoffs, guys, with the top 12 that they currently have. Obviously, Morgan Barron, Dave. We're going to talk about him in a bit, I imagine, because we've got Murat coming up, and obviously we're going to find out if Barron is an option tonight, right, Dave? Because as reported, it looked like he might get into a game on the road trip. That obviously didn't happen, but I think Morgan Barron easily fits into that fourth line, and then you've got Al Iafallo and obviously Rasmus Kupari there, right? So that's still a pretty good fourth line, guys, right? So I look at this team, and I still think they're just short of a little bit more of an offensive spark. And obviously you look directly to that second line, and that's why they went out and they acquired Sean Monahan and Tyler Toffoli last year. And we know the names that are out there, right? Whether it's, Brock Nelson, Braden Shen, whether that's a Ryan O'Reilly, like there's names out there that I think would be an upgrade over Vladislav Nemesnikov. But I imagine, Chevy has already targeted one or two or several players, and you have to ask yourself the question, like, could the Jets go on a deep playoff run with Nemesnikov as your 2C? And nobody knows the answer, but obviously it didn't happen last year. So why would you think it's going to happen this year, right? Like, and I have a lot of respect for Nemesnikov. We've had him on the show. He just signed his contract, obviously, which happened while we were live doing the IC Hockey show. So I think Nemesnikov factors in, in future years to the Jets. But I still think, if you're able to acquire, for example, a Brock Nelson and upgrade your second line, I think that you just increase your chances of going deeper in the playoffs, Dave.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I was trying to think this whole time of a word to use that would describe it. And I think that, it's interesting. I mean, I point to Mike McIntyre's article. I'll do my soliloquy, and then I'll come up with a word while I'm discussing it with you guys. But like, I think it's I look at what Mike wrote about. And I've done this before. It's just in terms of,
you're talking about the article he wrote a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, last week, and he basically said, he outlined what the past 10 Stanley Cup or 15 Stanley Cup winners have done and what types of moves they made to change their lineup. And it was more the ones that had success. It was about augmenting rather than making substantive changes. So while I've in the past mentioned like a Mackenzie Weegar type or whatever, I understand that's shoot pie in the sky. But my point is that when you're talking big and bold, because Mackenzie Weegar would be big and bold, and I don't think the Flames are getting rid of him. I'm just talking about who would be an ideal fit on that top pairing alongside Josh Morrissey. And so if you look at the big bold moves, they don't always tend to work. And look no further than the Winnipeg Jets. Sean Monahan worked, right?
Until it didn't. It worked in the regular season until it didn't in the playoffs.
Until it didn't in the playoffs. Tyler Toffoli never really seemed to work. So, but the point is the Jets made they made a big move and it worked. Look, what it did was it kind of, it impacted their power play, obviously, but it didn't have a substantial impact on their 5-on-5 overall. And like you said, Drew, towards not overall, but like in the playoffs, I mean.
Right.
And so, and that's the key. And so it's hard to talk about a team that's lost 14 games this season in regulation, 3 obviously in overtime, they've only lost 3 in overtime. So it's hard to talk about a team and get overly concerned, Ezzy, because I mean, ultimately this is the team, like we talk about it. This is the team that's gotten you there. So are you better off standing pat and allowing this team and increasing your depth around the margins and then not trying to make that substantive change? Now, look, I've heard guys like Craig Button this week talk about how the second line needs to be beefier, how it needs to be bigger, how the game changes. What you're doing in the regular season is great, but are you going to be able to win with that second line when the games get harder and they're playing against whichever line consistently? And
let me interrupt you for a second. You talk about the second line needing to be bigger.
Yeah.
There was a short period of time. It wasn't a lengthy runway, but there was a period of time when because of injury, Adam Lowry was the second line center. And now, we've said it and other people have said it. Well, Adam Lowry can't be the second line center on a Stanley Cup team. Well, but neither can
if he's playing with Nikolai Ehlers, he could.
Well, but neither can Vlad Namestnikov. So if you're looking to increase the heft and the beef on your second line, maybe it's a matter of internal realignment, and so you don't have to go out and get a bigger second line player.
Sure.
You go and you move Lowry up and you move Namestnikov somewhere else, and you have other big guys to surround him. So maybe the beef can be found lower in your lineup right now, and that's how you augment it rather than going out and getting the bona fide, beefier, bigger second line center.
I mean, fine, but the problem with that logic was that this was a move made
out of necessity.
And again, what was Arneal's default when Lowry was set to come back after missing 8 games? He said, I know where he's going. Right. But my point is that if you're going to try something, you're not going to be, as I said maybe a month ago on the show when we were talking about Logan Stanley, you said you're willing to try something during the regular season, especially when you're having an exceptional regular season. When you're not willing to try it, Ezzy, is in the middle of the playoff run. And you're like, okay, we're getting caved. Our second line's getting caved. Let's try this. Because we had some success with it in games, 45 to 50 or something like that. So I just think like it's fair, Drew. It's a fair thought process. But I just think, from that perspective, it's hard to see it, because why wouldn't you run with that and see how that continues to go for your team? You already know that. Well, you didn't really know that Namestnikov and Ehlers and Perfetti were going to be this red hot. You didn't know that Cole Perfetti, as he was going to realign himself as Prickfetti. And, for 10 games now, what does he have? 5 goals, 7 assists. Like, he's been performing very, and he just seems to be like a different player right now.
I'd agree.
But again, the key is the beef. If you're a vegetarian, you might not want to watch the show, because we're talking about increasing the beef, and whether that's on the back end, boys, where the Jets have, and I think that's the focus. Really, I
think you have to bring in a better option.
Kyle's got it. Sid, what about this guy Sid from Pittsburgh?
yeah. Jeff Hamilton would definitely be happy with that from the Free Press, because he was pushing that last year. No, do whatever you have to do to bring in Sid Crosby from Pittsburgh, no doubt. But you have to upgrade the defense, and to me, that's almost a bigger concern for the Jets. And, we don't have to go, spend too much time on why. I think everybody knows that, Logan Stanley has had his struggles. It's been well documented on the third pair, whether that's on the left side or the right side, which we can't really understand, why Stanley's been used on the right side, considering that he's clearly a left shot defenseman, but the Jets, obviously prefer him in the lineup over a player like Ville Heinola, right? Or sometimes Colin Miller. So, I mean, there's talk of a guy like David Savard. Craig Button has been talking about that all week. He's a right shot defenseman. I mean, I look at guys like, we've talked about these guys, whether it's a Brian Dumoulin, whether it's a Mario Ferraro, Jamie Alexiak, right? Like there's good defensemen out there, guys.
Yeah.
That we believe are available based on what the insiders are telling us, right? So I think the Jets are going to make at least a move or two, right, guys? Like I don't think we're saying that the Jets are going to stand pat and not make any moves. We always talk about, you need 10 good defensemen to make a long playoff run. You always need more depth. A guy I wanted to throw out there that I think would be very interesting, who's obviously not a 2C, is Joel Armia. And again, guys, like I know that the Jets' bottom six has been pretty good, but I look at a guy like Armia, who I believe he's got 10 goals for the Habs this year.
10 goals, 14 assists, 24 points in 59 games.
There you go. You had it up, Drew. So
and he was available on waivers earlier this year.
Well, that's the one thing that I think people are saying, well, why would a team give up? Like, I don't think you're giving up more than a third rounder probably for Armia, Drew. Something like that. I mean, like you're not giving up obviously a first round pick. I think a second round pick is too high. So probably a third rounder, Dave, gets you Armia, or let's just say a third or fourth rounder gets you Armia, right? I don't know if he has a year left on his contract or not, but that would obviously
he's a pending UFA.
Okay, so pending UFA.
Pure rental.
So the point is that the asking price would be relatively low for Armia compared to like a Brock Nelson or a Ryan O'Reilly, right? So I think Armia would be like, again, guys, this is just a increasing the depth on your roster. Obviously that would push, somebody out of the lineup. I'm not sure if that would be Morgan Barron who gets pushed out of the lineup. I'm not sure, but Armia is an interesting guy because like you said, Drew, right? Like you go back to the 2022 Colorado Avalanche playoff run, which our good friend Kenny Weeb always mentions. Who were the big acquisitions? It was Arturi Lehkonen and Josh Manson, right? Those were the two key acquisitions. I think Devon Taves was earlier in the season, right?
He was at the draft for 2 second-round picks, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. Right. No. So, but it was Lehkonen and Manson. So Lehkonen improves your top six. Manson improves your top four. He's that big, solid defensive defenseman, that the Avalanche coveted. So like, that's kind of what we're talking about here. Everyone is hyper-focused on 2C, but maybe it's going to be, a depth winger and, a depth defenseman. But these are going to be above average ads that just complement your team and make the first place team that the Jets are even better. So
the biggest skill that Armia has demonstrated this year is penalty killing. That's where he's been at his best for the Montreal Canadiens. Yes. And the Jets' PK has certainly been better than it was at times this year. And it's now, I think, right around the middle 14th. Of the league, 14th, 15th, something like that. So Armia would certainly probably shore that up. If you wanted to sort of if you wanted to acquire a guy with a focus on improving X part of your team, Armia, at least based on his performance in Montreal, would improve the Jets' penalty kill. That would be the X that he has brought in to sort of fix. Like Monahan last year was brought in to fix the power play.
And Drew, I just wanted to say one thing here. I see our good buddy Darwin saying Colton Parayko. Andy Strickland reported earlier this week Colton Parayko's not being traded.
I never understood. I mean, there's been so many people talking about Colton Parayko. I mean, Kenny Weeb, who we, of course, love, has been talking about Colton Parayko next to Josh Morrissey for I think 3 years now.
Right after he signed his 7-year deal with St. Louis.
Yeah. And there's an article coming out. There's an article in The Athletic from Murat this morning, and Murat's going to join us in about 10 minutes' time, where he mentions Colton Parayko. I just don't see... I mean, unless St. Louis is sort of stripping things to the bone there, I'm not sure how you're getting,
St. Louis also, by the way, St. Louis also won 3 straight, and they're 4 points back of the wild card right now.
3
points back of a wild card. So, which, I mean, let's be clear, they traded Paul Stastny to the Jets in 2019 for, 2018. But when they were, remember, they were still challenging, and it pissed off a lot of players because Stastny was popular, but I'm just saying. So it wouldn't be completely out of character for Doug Armstrong, who we established is the longest serving GM. The last time we were having a conversation about Cheveldayoff's tenure, and we realized that Doug Armstrong
the difference was that Stasny was a pending UFA. Parayko they have under contract for multiple years. He's not like, there's no urgency to make that trade unless the Jets are blowing them out of the water.
Which is what Andy, to conclude Ezzy's point, is what Andy said. He basically said they're not doing it unless the offer is so insane that and you know, Drew, I want to kind of jump off that point though quickly, and this idea of no trade and no move clauses and guys aren't coming to Winnipeg. Let's be realistic. And waived. You know what?
They get waived. You can waive things.
Of course, not only that, everybody's like, oh, it's like, let me tell you something. If a guy's on a terrible team, like, first of all, it's March. We know that Winnipeg in March, and you can be like, oh, it's Winnipeg. If I'm a guy who is wanting to increase my value and is wanting to get a big contract, and we know that Nick Lynham did a really good of breakdown of guys who have been in Winnipeg. A lot of those guys were drafted guys who ended up turning it into big deals. But the point is, what guy in their right mind is not going to come to Winnipeg if you're a UFA? Like, I just don't even understand the talk around the league. It doesn't make any sense.
Sure.
Because you have a chance to challenge for a Stanley Cup. Now, fine, if you've got 3 Stanley Cups like Sidney Crosby, you're not going to necessarily say okay. But the point is, for a guy who wants to win, if you don't want to win that badly that you're not willing to waive, you can be like, oh, the kids, like, how many guys go somewhere and you leave your family behind for 2 or 3 months because you want, or 4 or 5 if you were going to go till the end of June. So to me, that whole conversation about, oh, Kevin Cheveldayoff's arms are tied because guys have these no move, no trade, I honestly think it's BS. It doesn't make it literally, I'm not saying I'm in the room to know that it is BS, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me that a guy who says, I want to win a Stanley Cup isn't going to waive to come to Winnipeg to, 1, get a good chance to win a Stanley Cup, and 2, and maybe more importantly, secure his potentially his livelihood. Look what Sean Monahan got out of having a phenomenal. He got Winnipeg and Columbus bidding him, and he got an unbelievable deal. And he's been good for Columbus. I think he was like a point of game player, but he's also dealing with injuries, which is why I remember when the Jets were talking about signing him, I said, you can't sign him for a long-term deal because it's going to kill you in a couple of years. So I'm just saying that for a Jets, for all that narrative that's out there, I think it's stupid. It doesn't make any sense to me because, again, a guy who wants to win a Stanley Cup is willing to waive, and more importantly, a guy who wants to earn a substantial increase in salary is also probably willing to waive and come to a great team and have a big role.
To your point about, yes, I think you make a very valid point. It's one thing to waive if you have 5 years left on your deal,
for
and
sure.
you may not want to spend the next 5 years in whatever city. But it's a whole different thing if you are a pending UFA at season's end.
Yeah.
And the images, I mean, don't think that the images of the street parties and the whiteouts and the raucous atmosphere don't, get their way around the league. And guys will say, hey, that team's got legitimate Stanley Cup aspirations. That team's got legitimate hopes to play deep. And that looks like a fun atmosphere that I wouldn't mind being involved in for the next 3-4 months. And then I can choose my next home. So I think you are very right about that, Dave.
It just bothers me, Ezzy, because I hear it out there all the time by all these people, and I'm just like,
it's a lazy narrative. It's a
lazy narrative, boys, because player after player has decided to sign long-term with the Jets. Like, right, we know all the names, whether it's Scheifele, Hellebuck, Connor, Morrissey, most recently Nemesnikov, right? Like, so if pro hockey players didn't like playing here, they wouldn't sign here. Right. And obviously the Jets are not a top UFA destination. By the way, sorry, just pivoting here really quickly, guys. I know Murat's coming up in about 5 minutes. One guy I wanted to mention, one guy that was really interesting to me on our buddy Frank Saravalli's trade board is Alex Tuck. And he's got 1 year left on his contract. Obviously, Tuck is a right winger. He's got 20 goals this year for the Sabres. And speaking of no move clauses, I don't know if he has a no move clause, but if he does, like, Tuck would be another example.
He'd be a fantastic addition.
He's also got the beef.
Tuck's a big boy. Yeah. And again, you remember who was on the Vegas Golden Knights when they beat the Jets in that 2018 run? Tuck was on there. Obviously, he was traded to Buffalo after that. But this is a guy who's got a track record in the playoffs with Vegas. And like I mentioned, he's got 20 goals this year for a terrible Sabres team. So I'm just saying, like, Chevy, I think, might be looking at wingers. And like I know people don't like the idea of necessarily, going with Scheifele, Nemesnikov, Lowry, Kupari up the middle, but I mean, the Jets are first place in the NHL with those 4 centers, right? So I don't know. I still think there's a good chance that Chevy acquires a second line center, I guess. But I just, me personally, over the last month, I've kind of, changed my tune. I wouldn't be as disappointed if Chevy doesn't acquire a 2C as I would have been maybe a month ago, just because Nemesnikov, Perfetti, and Ehlers have been playing much better. But I think that, there's definitely a lot of names out there that are intriguing. Like Alex Tuch to me would look, like no disrespect to Mason Appleton, but I think Alex Tuch would be a big upgrade on the wing of that third line.
Well, there's no rule that says you have to. I mean, most teams like to build up the middle, but there's no rule that says you can only win that way by being super strong up the middle. If you are pretty strong on the wings and you're average, maybe average plus up the middle, well, you still probably got a pretty good team. So there's no rule. To your point, Ezzy, I think what you're saying is it's not worth overpaying strictly for a centerman because of whatever preconceived notion about you have to have that center depth, when if you can go out and pay a little bit less for an even better winger, and that maybe offsets the any perceived weakness you have up the middle.
Well, and you could spin an argument in multiple ways. You can say, well, Nemesnikov was the 2C last year and Chevy acquired Monahan, but then you could spin it and then say, well, the Jets got bumped out in the first round with Monahan, right? So like, and Monahan was considered by us and by most people a great addition. And during the regular season, in what did he play? Maybe 15 games or something like that with the Jets. I forget exactly.
More than that, because they acquired him
in 20 games. Let's say 20 games, 25 games. Right. He was really good. And then obviously in the playoffs, like, the Jets lost as a team. It wasn't on Monahan. Like, you could say Monahan was slow and he wasn't great in the playoffs, but so I think that there's it's not just a guarantee that Chevy's going to get a 2C and he's going to get a second line winger and he's going to get a left side defenseman. Like, I think that there's multiple options here, and the Jets are a better team than they were last year, guys. Let's be honest here. And they're stronger. Their special teams are stronger. Their second line is stronger. But they're going to make moves. It's hard to pinpoint. There's not necessarily one obvious player out there. And we've talked about this. It could be a player we haven't even discussed, even though I think we've covered everybody on Sarah Valley's trade deadline board. But I mean,
nobody saw Paul Stastny coming. I mean, Chevy works in the shadows pretty well.
Hey, and Ezzy, it wouldn't be shocking if he went to the Buffalo Sabres, although they might not answer his calls. There might be a few teams that don't want to answer his calls after doing deals with him. Yeah. But the only thing I would say is that it's not like Vlad Nemesnikov has no playoff experience. He played, he went on a run with the Tampa Bay Lightning where he had 17 games. He had a run with the Avalanche where he played 12 games. So he's played deep into the playoffs for a bunch of teams, and he had another run of 12 games with the Lightning. So he does have some experience, and that was of course a few years ago. But yeah, I mean it's an interesting idea. Like, or do you bump Cole Perfetti down and put Perfetti with someone else and have, we'll see. I mean, I think what you want from a Jets perspective, and I'll just kind of, I guess my word, Drew, is curious. I'll be curious if the Jets choose not to do much. Let's put it that way.
Back to the original question. Curious is the answer for you.
But I just think from my perspective, you want to be able to be a team that can evolve and be not stuck by, okay, this is what we have to do. So you want to be able to have, if we need to, if Perfetti or Ehlers isn't going, then we have to be able to move someone else who can get that line going. And right now, it doesn't seem like they've necessarily got that big driver who could do that. But I just think like maybe we'll see that's the kind of acquisition that, like as he's talking about, that maybe someone comes in as a third line winger, but like an Alex Tuch. But if you want to talk about that, maybe he replaces Appleton. But in theory, he can also jump up into your second line and be very effective.
More Jets talk to come with Murat Ates of The Athletic. Saturday morning, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show presented by Play Now. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. Don't go anywhere.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
Bottom of the hour. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg with you Saturday morning. The Jets and the Flyers later on tonight, which means the Illegal Curve postgame show later on tonight, right around 8:45, give or take a couple minutes. We'll be back to talk about what happens in downtown Winnipeg at tonight's game. But for now, we're pleased to welcome to the program our good friend Murat Ates from The Athletic. Murat, I got to say, you know that you've reached celebrity status when a friend of mine last weekend texted me that they saw you working on one of your great articles at a local coffee shop, and they were too intimidated to go up to you and say hello. I said, he's a very friendly guy. I said, go up to him, introduce yourself, say that you're a friend of mine, and give him a hug, and he refused to do it. I thought he missed out on a great opportunity, but there you go. That's celebrity status. You're being spotted out in the wild, and people are noticing you.
That's funny to me because I can imagine what I looked like in that moment, and if you've never seen it, my work face looks unapproachable. It is pure grump. So
genius at work, Murat. Genius at work.
Yeah, I got it. Just to erase a typo or two. I really got to get right in there. So apologies to your friend there.
No, you have nothing to apologize for. He said that you looked fine. He just was too intimidated being in your presence. He's a bit of a scaredy cat in the best of times anyways, but that's neither here nor there. But what is rapidly approaching, maybe both here and there, is the NHL trade deadline. And fortunately, you just came out with an article this morning. Dave M., I'm not sure if you have it up yet on illegalcurve.com. It gives a thumbs up. You can see it there. And, of course, on the Athletic website, just some more trade targets for the Winnipeg Jets. But what makes these ones, I'd say, a little bit more interesting or a little bit more worth discussing is that there's some of the names we haven't necessarily been at the front burner of the conversations. We know the names at the front burner, but these ones feature three Montreal Canadiens prominently in Joel Armia, who we just talked about, Yoel Armia, Jake Evans, Josh Anderson, so maybe just sort of walk the audience through the thinking behind the latest article regarding trade targets for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, it starts from a place of me personally thinking, hey, some of those big fish would be great. I think there's been a lot of talk about Brock Nelson. That's, a pretty good player. I think he'd be an upgrade on that second line center. Not my favorite fit in the world, but I think a quality player. He's got a no trade clause that exists. And so that is an item to at least be concerned about. And the Islanders still believe they're in the midst of a playoff run. So why would they be in a hurry to be moving Nelson if they think that they've still got a shot? And that's the thing in both conferences. There's a lot of teams, even if they don't have a wild card spot right now, like the Islanders, they think that they're close, and that's their perspective over there. I think you move over to the big fish, who I think is my favorite idea of a fit for Winnipeg, and that's Ryan O'Reilly in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everything he does, he's a 200-foot player. The offense hasn't been there, but he's been all over the offensive zone. He fights for the middle of the ice at both ends of the rink. And he is not just a number 2 center quality player to me. I think he's a little bit better than that still as a Conn Smythe winner back in 2019. Well, Nashville is treating him as if he has a no trade clause, and he has a really great contract at $4.5 million. They're probably not in a hurry to move him anywhere that isn't absolutely his favorite place. And he'd know Winnipeg is a quality place. He has connections here. There's people on the team that he would know, but it's also another few years at a place that he's never lived. And, Winnipeg is a bit of a grower on people in the NHL, right? So when you start thinking about that and you start thinking about the prices that, a team is going to ask for, if they think they're still in the playoff mix, they're going to need to have quite an offer come their way to move players. Like I've heard the ask for Scott Lawton is a first-round pick. A few people have told me that, and that seems high to me. And then when you go to that O'Reilly, Nelson, Braden Shen type of tier, it's going to be higher, and there's reasons to think they might not waive. All of that said, there are players maybe a little further down the lineup who have some Jets experience, and Yoel Armia is one of them, right? Obviously, no trade clause protection over there too. But if the Jets are pivoting towards a chemistry-focused fit, and that's what I think is happening on that front, they might look to players like that. Pierre LeBrun reported that they kicked tires on Armia. I think they've kicked tires on Brandon Tanev. Like I think that there are depth pieces that may be Winnipeg's focus, and those are 2 we talked about in that piece. So happy to talk about any of the others. And I think that the overall move is away maybe from some of those big fish and towards okay, who can help the PK? Who can add a little bit of physicality? Who can help in the bottom 6? Or maybe if they're the 13th forward one night, it's not an emergency, that kind of stuff.
I'm not sure if you caught the earlier part of the show, Murat, but and thank you for saying Yoel, because I called him Joel Armia. It is Yoel Armia. I think that would be a great ad for the Jets. And I just wanted to go back to Ryan O'Reilly, because I mean, you mentioned Brock Nelson, like Ryan O'Reilly. These are the quote unquote big fish, right? And I think you make a really good point. Like with 2 years left on his contract, $4.5 million, I think you'd agree is very manageable, especially with the cap going up, right? What do you see? Like, let's say that O'Reilly was willing to waive his no move clause and come to the Jets. Like, what would the return be for O'Reilly, considering he has 2 years left? Like, are you having to throw in a top prospect like Colby Barlow to acquire him?
I wonder if that's the case. It's funny. So for anyone who hasn't heard this, and it's been repeated a couple of times, but Ryan O'Reilly doesn't have a no trade, but the organization is treating him like
right.
It's the same effective thing, right? They're going to check in with him if they
everything could be waived.
Yeah,
even if it's an imaginary no move clause.
Well,
even if it's across from Peanut Park down the road from us here, that's for Drew.
I'm hugging you. I'm hugging you.
The hug heard around the world.
Yeah. So for me, I thought that a first-round pick would be a reasonable price for him. But you may have seen the Who Says No piece that I put together at The Athletic this week. And it's where I took Jets fan proposals to agents and to an NHL executive who's in a front office who makes decisions about this sort of stuff. And I sort of put the prices to them. And the vibe seemed to be that a first round pick itself would be reasonable, but that maybe this market is a little bit more of a seller's market. And in a typical year, a first round pick may be enough to get that type of deal done, but probably it would take more this year. So your point to Colby Barlow or some other type of not an elite prospect, but a quality one. You know, that type of deal.
I didn't dare say Braden Yager, by the way. I wouldn't dare.
No. That there's a tier that Winnipeg absolutely wouldn't move off of. I'm not even convinced that they'd be willing to move off of Colby Barlow. I just know that there's some concern about what he can become, given his numbers are kind of average for somebody who's, is he just turned 20 or is he about to turn 20 in the OHL?
Yeah. I mean, Barlow's obviously definitely taking a little bit of a step back from, not excelled the way we expected him to. And maybe the way he left Owen Sound and went to Oshawa wasn't exactly ideal, but he hasn't jumped off the page this year, which you kind of expect given the fact that it's I think it's third season in the OHL at this point, or third full season, I think. But anyways, Murat, to me, and the question I have for you is, can the Jets afford not to be all in this year? I mean, if there ever was a year for a Jets team to be all in, and again, all in doesn't necessarily mean make a bazillion trades and change the chemistry of this team. But from your perspective, is this year, with all the considerations, with all the numbers going up next year, with the uncertainty surrounding Nikolai Ehlers, is there ever going to be a better year with Connor Hellebuck playing at his level? Is there ever going to be a better year for the Jets to be all in than this one we're seeing right now?
I mean, the hot take says no. Obviously, like we can't see the future, and Cheveldayoff's and company at the Jets have done a pretty good job of anticipating things. Like I think that most of the times that they've been written off, they come up with another move, right? And so I'm hesitant to say that they won't be this good again or something like that. But the odds favor that they won't be this good again. It's hard to guarantee a first place position in the NHL standing this far into the season. And your point, let's use Hellebuck, right? The best player on the team, most impactful, probably legitimate consideration for the Hart Trophy when the season is done. Well, even the best of them have down seasons, right? Like Carey Price had seasons where you wouldn't have loved his save percentage at the end of the day, especially when you push into the mid-30s and beyond. Even the greats, interspersed amongst the great seasons, can have down years. What's remarkable is how Hellebuck has avoided that. So yeah, there's a reason right there to think, well, this is a special moment. The investment they've made in him and Scheifele, right? This may be Scheifele's best season ever as well at his age too, with the power play being the major difference. If you look at Scheifele's numbers, it's not that he's gotten better at 5-on-5 offensively. He's producing at a level that's normal for him, and he's had years better than this. It's the power play that's wild. So there are reasons to think that their two biggest, most important contracts are at their peak right now. And then to your other point, without going player by player through the list, the cap space that they have, it's just remarkable that they've made it to this spot and can add as much as they have the approach, or as they approach the deadline. Pardon me. Credit Velarde's bridge deal, which he's going to make more than double than that on his next contract. Perfetti as a bridge deal instead of a longer-term extension. There's multiple millions of dollars under the cap that they get to be because of decisions that they've made. And that doesn't happen every year. Even with the cap going up, you can't necessarily guarantee that. The last thing I guess I'll say on that topic is that players want to win. So if they make a swing and it is a good player who finds a way to integrate himself into the team and contributes, I think that every Jet will be happy with that, however it shakes out. Like, they appreciated Sean Monahan and the way that he was out for team dinners, he was participating in the college, he was doing all of those things, and he was playing a big role on that second line in the power play. They liked that, right? It's maybe, Tyler Toffoli wasn't the greatest fit, right? So I think the argument is there's cap space, it's a unique opportunity, go for it. And then you've got to nail your swing. It has to be a Monahan type fit and not a Toffoli type fit, I think. And that's where the risk comes in, because what if Ryan O'Reilly says, actually, no, I like Nashville, don't move me,
Murat Ates, our guest this Saturday morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, talking about the trade deadline, talking about the Winnipeg Jets. Murat, in that article that you published this morning, you have two defensemen listed there, Brandon Carlo and Colton Parayko, both of whom are right shot defensemen. Most of this season, we've spent our focus on upgrading the left side of the Jets defense. if the Jets only acquire one defenseman, how assured, what percentage would you put on that being a left side defenseman versus a right side defenseman? Has the philosophy, has the thinking, has our thinking maybe been wrong all this time, and the Jets would be looking to upgrade on the right side rather than the left side?
I think that the role is the most substantial thing for me. To put it plainly, it's the third pairing left defenseman that I think Winnipeg has the greatest chance of upgrading. Right,
Logan Stanley. What we've all been, by and large, it's Logan Stanley's job now is what it's been for the last 30 games or so.
Yeah, absolutely. So Logan Stanley, I think, is the player that you want to upgrade. Ideally, you find somebody who has playoff experience and excellence there. I know he scored those 2 goals and sort of at the tail end of that Montreal series, but that's a long time ago. He's not the guy if you're looking for that playoff workhorse necessarily. And he's been a bit, even at this stage of the season, with a steady runway, a bit of a scoring chance against waiting to happen, whether it's transition, whether it's in zone, whether it's a minor penalty. And credit to him, I think he went 12 games in a row without a minor penalty. That is a lengthy streak, and penalties have been an issue. So that's the spot. And I think the number one types of players that you would imagine filling that spot would be left-handed defensemen. You think of a Jamie Oleksiak. I think that's the blue sky version of Logan Stanley right there. I think. Yep. I think Carson Soucy is a left-handed defenseman, is he not? So I think that's
Mario Ferraro, Brian Dumoulin. I mean, the list of left side defensemen that we've been talking about for the last 3 months has been extensive. But I couldn't help but notice that in this article, you're looking at the right there with a couple guys, with Carlo and Parayko.
Yeah, I think it's tough. Like Parayko, I actually don't think is moving, and I don't think I don't think that's happening. It's just Jets fans ask me about him all of the time. Yeah. And so I had to sort of say my piece there. And as much as it's cool that he played with Josh Morrissey, and as much as it's cool that he's a big right-handed defenseman and can do some unique things, and right-handed defensemen are on the rarer side still, it doesn't seem to be a fit that's likely to happen transaction-wise. Brandon Carlo's inclusion there is because of his skill set. And it's because he's been pushed a little bit out of his depth with Charlie McAvoy and other injuries in Boston. But when he's a sort of number 5, number 6 kind of guy, he crushes those minutes, and he's a good penalty killer. And he crushes those minutes in a way that involves that sort of crease clearing, tying up sticks, boxing out type of defending that I think Winnipeg would like to add. So I think he would be a fit in terms of the way that Winnipeg wants to modify maybe its skill set or to add that element. At the end of the day, though, to answer your question in one word instead of 1,000, I think the left side. Like, it makes the more sense.
Yeah, I think most people agree with that. Even though, like you said, if the Jets can make a big upgrade on the right side, I mean, why not go ahead and do that, right, Murat? I wanted to ask you something, and I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but there's been a lot of talk, or some talk, about there's nobody on the Jets that's won a Stanley Cup. How much emphasis do you place on that, and how much emphasis do you believe the Jets management group places on that, right? Because you mentioned Brandon Carlo. He won a Stanley Cup earlier in his career, right? Brian Dumoulin, Stanley Cup with Pittsburgh. Yanni Gourde is another guy that, whether it's on Daily Face-Off or other sites, you hear about, Stanley Cup experience. Like, is that something, like, I know it's tough to quantify, but do you think that's something, like, again, I asked, like, how much emphasis do you place on that? And how much emphasis do you think the Jets place on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And I'd have to think my way through it. I think probably most NHL teams do put emphasis on that. Within the culture of the NHL, having won is a bonus. That is a thing. That is something that I've heard people talk about as a benefit. And I guess the idea is, like, everybody thinks they've grinded. Everybody thinks they've worked hard. Everybody thinks that they've been resilient and overcome just like an awful bounce or an awful game or something like that, until they've met somebody who's done an even better job of that, right? Like, I used to say, a lot of players thought that they worked hard in practice until they met Blake Wheeler, during his prime. And I think that sort of culture exists. And I think it was Kevin on the broadcast, Kevin Sawyer was talking about sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And that's a point that I think actually does apply to the NHL. Like, I think having people who have been there and done that and experienced those types of stresses, and it helps. I also think on the flip side of that, the Winnipeg Jets room isn't as good of a place as it's ever been. And, I think that not only do they have a captain who absorbs the ups and downs extremely well in an Adam Lowry, but I think that leadership group that spreads out well beyond Morrissey and Scheifele, you include Neil Pionk and the impact he has in that room. You include so many of the players. Like, I think that group, no, they haven't won a Stanley Cup, but I think that they show the requisite resilience to go through some stuff and overcome it. And that's the story of this season, is them overcoming the embarrassing loss to Colorado. And maybe it's good that a lot of people in that room have a chip on their shoulder.
Murat, it's interesting because last year there was all these UFAs on the team, and Kevin Cheveldayoff said, I don't want to upset the apple cart, and I don't want to give one guy a contract and have another guy not have a contract. So Dylan DeMello doesn't get a contract. Brendan Dillon doesn't get a contract. Those are the two primary ones. And of course, when all is said and done, Brendan Dillon becomes a New Jersey Devil, and Dylan DeMello resigns long-term here in Winnipeg. So we kind of thought, well, is that going to stick? Is that going to hold? Well, we learned last Saturday on this show, live on the show, actually, that Vlad Nemestikov derailed one of Drew's segments because Vlad Nemestikov, of course, signed
Very
his
selfishly. I have to add.
Yes,
we were ecstatic for him to derail Drew's segment.
Yeah. Horrible for them to give us content live on the show. But one of the things that it did was did that change the calculus, right? Does that change what Kevin Cheveldayoff's willing to do? And we had heard a lot of talk that, during Four Nations, people were going to be busy and signing contracts. Said they were watching some fantastic hockey, but that obviously didn't happen here in Winnipeg. Now you got the Vlad Nemestikov. So what I'm curious about is, from your perspective, do you anticipate this kind of opens the floodgates and maybe some other UFAs get done? Or do you think this is a one-off and this is just going to be, the rest will kind of play out however they play out come July 1st or maybe before the trade deadline?
Yeah, great question. And I think that that's something that the Jets are working on. And I think that the Jets are in touch. So I had a chance to talk with Vlad earlier this week. Pulled him aside after a scrum that he did and sort of was like, hey, let's talk about this. And from his perspective, it seemed as though, and he said this, but to what extent was the weight of it? He said that after all the various trade deadlines as a UFA in the past and all the times that he's been moved, he really wanted to feel secure and safe and know that he was going to be a Winnipeg Jet. And if you go back through his career, I think he's been moved 6 times, and I think 4 of them were at a trade deadline. So, or like in the approach. So I think that there was a personal reason on his front to be like, hey, I like it here. I fit here. Let's go. Let's make sure that this gets done in advance. But he's not the only one, right? And some of these guys will affect Winnipeg's cap picture in an even bigger way than Nemesnikov does moving forward. And I think Neil Pionk would be maybe a good example of that. I'm fairly confident that the Jets are in it to re-sign him. I think that that's something that they've prioritized for a while. If you've read my writing for any length of time, I always assume that that's an extension that's going to happen. And so will that happen before the deadline? I think that that's possible. I think it's possible that we get that in the next, I guess the deadline's 6 days away. I think that's possible. I sincerely do. Is it going to be an absolute floodgates? That I'm not as sure of, but I do think he's a core piece for the Winnipeg Jets and from their perspective, and they might look to lock him up.
Well, to your point about Neil Pionk, your colleague at The Athletic, Dom Lucian, has been going on about Dylan Samberg. Mm-hmm. And we know that Samberg and Pionk have been exquisite together as a partnership. I mean, if Samberg and Pionk work as well as Morrissey and DeMello go, is the Jets' top 4 maybe just, sort of more solidified than we're all maybe expect with a Neil Pionk contract extension?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. It's certainly done the job this year, has it not? And, the concern, I guess, at some point is, when DeMello ages out or, DeMello's start to the season, maybe he started to give some pause. I think that there were some moments where he wasn't on his game and all that stuff that we love that he does. That's that quiet, subtle stuff. It wasn't always working for him, but I think that's rounded out quite a bit. I guess it's sort of, you could run that top four for the next few years, I think. And it's just a matter of when Elias Salomonsson takes over and maybe takes that job up top, like even if everything goes well.
Last one for you, Murat. We'll know what you get on with your Saturday morning. Of course, the game tonight between the Jets and the Flyers. It looks apparent, I can say with a fair degree of confidence, that it's likely to be one of Vancouver, Calgary. For argument's sake, I'll throw Utah in there as well. Do the Jets, do you think that they have a preference, or do you think that you look at those three teams that the Jets would likely be facing in a first-round matchup and the Jets say, we are... they've lost to Utah this year. They've lost to Calgary this year. I don't believe they've lost to Vancouver off the top of my head. Do you think they have a preference, or are the Jets at this point almost matchup proof in that first round, saying as long as we do what we need to do, we're going to be confident in our abilities to against whomever we end up matching up against?
Yeah, my guess is if we put that question to any of them right now, they'd say we'd worry about ourselves, right? Just like that second half of what you said is like, if the Jets play to the Jets' capability, they'll be fine in that first round, I think. And this isn't last year where it's like, okay, Colorado, Winnipeg could go 7. Who's going to win? It seems real close, right? Yeah. Winnipeg already has like a 20-something point lead on all three of those teams at this stage. And, anything can happen between now and down the stretch. But I think it's a case where Winnipeg has sort of handled its own business so well that in the first round, they've earned the right to be treated as heavy favorites. And they've earned the right to be able to say, the hockey cliche, like, we'll worry about ourselves, and for us to sort of believe it, because if they do handle their business, they should be able to win that series. And then you wonder, okay, well, Dallas, Minnesota, or maybe Colorado sneaks into that second round matchup, and now things are going to get a little bit tighter. But for that first round, I really think they're heavy favorites against anybody they get.
The 2018-19 Tampa Bay Lightning say hi to everybody. That's what I was thinking about when I was asking that question. In a 7-game series or in a 4-game sweep, as that instance may be, you never know. Stranger things have happened, but the Jets will deal with that once April and the playoffs come about. Murat Ates covers the Winnipeg Jets for The Athletic. He's a great friend of ours, a great friend of the program,
and he's a great guy to hug.
And he's a great guy to hug, but do not interrupt him when he's working at a local coffee shop, because hell hath no fury like a Murat interrupted. Thank you, friend.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, Murat.
There he goes. Murat Ates joining us this morning. Always insightful, always fun to catch up with Murat. We'll go to break. Anthony Sanfilipo covers the Philadelphia Flyers. He's set to join us on the other side of these commercials. We'll give you an update from morning skate between the Jets and the Flyers. Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. That's coming up next. Don't go anywhere.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now, you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in 2 unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
Second hour of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now with Dave. Hi, Dave.
Hey, Drew, how are you?
I'm good. What happened to the other guy?
Well, he wasn't back yet, so I figured we'd give him the courtesy of letting as he get. See, I don't like when we don't. This is a courtesy. We wait for Ez to return.
There he goes. He returns. The prodigal son returns here on the show. Anthony Sanfilipo, he covers the Philadelphia Flyers. He's set to join us momentarily. We'll talk to him about the Jets' opponent tonight. Speaking of the Jets in tonight's contest, looks like Morgan Barron is going to make his return to the Jets lineup. He's slotted on the fourth line with Rasmus Kupari and Alex Iafallo, so it looks like David Gustafsson is the odd man out. Not a real shocker there. Gustafsson certainly has played well and certainly has been a valuable contributor on that fourth line and has done exactly what the Winnipeg Jets would have wanted out of him, but I don't think it's a shock that he's going to come in as the 13th forward for tonight's contest. Also looks like Logan Stanley is going to move back to the left side and Colin Miller will return to the lineup. Still unclear if that was injury related or
no. It's not unclear. I listened. Of course, we didn't have the benefit of listening, but I went back and listened, and it was just because they were trying to get. I listened to the media availability.
Hayden Fleury a game.
They wanted to get a Hayden Fleury a game, so that was the reason why. But because I was curious, because I was kind of like, I realized after the show, Drew, we never actually got any clarity.
Right. And
usually Mike McIntyre of the Free Press, who asked the question, would have tweeted it out or mentioned it, but he didn't. And so we didn't have the benefit of that. And of course, we're doing the show live, so we can't exactly be listening to another show while we're there. But I went back and I listened, and sure enough, it was because of they just wanted to get Fleury a game.
There, it makes sense. Second half of back-to-back. I don't have a problem with that. But anyways, Colin Miller back in the lineup on the right side for the Jets. Logan Stanley on the left side for the Jets tonight against the Philadelphia Flyers. And then one non-Jets related, but trade deadline related. Sounds like Gus Nyquist of the Nashville Predators is going to be held out of the lineup for quote-unquote trade protection. I think the Predators are in Long Island to face the Islanders in a matinee today. So he will not play for Nashville. Elliot Friedman reported that it sounds like Minnesota is one of the front runners there to acquire Nyquist, but other teams are still sniffing around. So maybe the trade log jam is beginning to loosen up or get chiseled away one small move or one trade protection holdout at a time. We shall see. And of course, we'll keep you up to date all week long, culminating in next Friday's trade deadline, where the Jets play next Friday, in addition to Thursday in Philadelphia, the rematch of today's game. Anthony just texted me. He'll be here in a minute, so you can talk in the interim there, Ezzy.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Gus Nyquist a couple of years ago was on the Wild briefly. He, of course, as Dave M. knows, having formerly lived in Michigan, Gus Nyquist spent the early part, many years for the Detroit Red Wings, and he's a good player. We talked about it. He actually had his career year last year, 23 goals, 75 points with Nashville, but this year he's only got 9 goals and 21 points. So he's one of those players for the Predators, right? Having a bit of a down year. Obviously, Stamkos is one of those guys as well.
They've scored the least amount of goals in the NHL, as they're all having a down year.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's no shortage of guys that could be putting the puck in the net for the Preds. You're absolutely right, Dave. So yeah, I think we're going to be seeing that more and more, guys, right? Like, it's nitty gritty time, right? And I say that pun intended with the Philadelphia Flyers in town. We're going to start seeing, I think, more guys sitting out. It's going to heat up, right? We always see this. I mean, obviously there's a flurry of trades on the actual trade deadline day, but we're going to see some moves, I imagine. I'm actually a little bit surprised. Dave M and I have been going back and forth. I'm actually surprised that the Jets haven't made a move at this point. They could be waiting because of all the cap implications.
And the
but
roster,
as we know,
more roster than cap because they have the cap space galore. It's just about.
Well, that's what I meant. Kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah,
you have to make moves to AHL and calling guys up and sending guys down and everything like that. But most likely, we're going to have to wait till later next week to get those moves. But obviously, Nyquist is on the move, and he would be a good acquisition for the Wild because they definitely could use a little scoring depth.
I just will add, I don't think the Jets are making a move till Friday. I don't think they're making any. Like, he has been.
They do have an open roster spot. Like, if they move Anderson Dolan back down, although with Barron coming off of IR, I guess
they don't have an open roster spot. That's the whole point. Jared Anderson Dolan's got to be sent back down to the Moose. They don't have an extra roster spot.
Well, is that not going to be announced later today that Anderson Dolan's being sent down?
Once it's confirmed that this is the chronology. Barron's going to skate this morning. They're going to clear him, make sure that he's good, that nothing happened in morning skate.
13-8. They'll have 13-8.
Yeah, 13-8 and 2.
13-8 and 2. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Dave will have Morgan Barron's complete medical record on a legal.
No, but my point is that it's just that they don't have an open roster spot. So that, because remember, they've kept 8 defensemen this whole year. So they're 13-8 and 2. And I just don't anticipate. I know Anthony's coming in, so we'll get him here as soon as he can get himself orientated. But I think that the reality is that the Jets are not going to make that move unless they're going to deal. The only guy they're dealing, let's be realistic, it potentially is Ville Heinola.
Here is our good friend Anthony Sanfilipo joining us. I got to say, Anthony, apologies on our behalf to your wife for stealing you away from her so that you could join us this morning while you guys are out on a romantic weekend away in New York City.
My wife knows how it works. She understands the business, and she's sitting just to my right over here as we're sitting in a hotel lobby and waiting for this to happen. But you know what? I got to be honest with you. Like, we really didn't have any plans. As he texted me this morning, and he was all upset that he was going to miss this interview with me. So I, sneaky reached out to Drew and said, "Hey, have me on a little bit earlier so Ezzy can be there."
I appreciate that.
You're nicer to Ezzy than I am, because I would have just said PDB. I would be like, well, that's your fault, Ginsburg, for leaving the show early. That's not Anthony's fault. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, Anthony, given that you're joining us sort of on the small screen. This is from last night. It's the I'm sure you saw the team dinner that the Flyers held last night here in Winnipeg. Winnipeg does have restaurants. What are you seeing when you look at this image of the Flyers, or a number of the Flyers gathered together last night for dinner, tweeted out by Scott Lawton, a guy who's rumored to be on the trade block?
Yeah, I mean, what I can tell you, I don't need to even look at the image, but I know about it. He took his plan was to take a lot of the training staff and equipment guys out to dinner because it is their last road game before the deadline. Flyers are home for 7 in a row after this game in Winnipeg tonight. So it was the last time on the road. It was kind of a thank you for all the years that he's been there with them. He knows he's going to be traded. Where he ends up is still to be determined, but he knows it's coming in the next week. And this was his last opportunity to do that while they're on the road. So I anticipate that we will see Scott Lawton get traded in the next 6 days. And I'll tell you what, the Winnipeg Jets are right in the middle of this thing. I don't necessarily think they're the favorite right now. I would probably put New Jersey at the top of that list, but I wouldn't discount Winnipeg right now. I think they're one of 6 teams or so that are really trying hard to get Scott Lawton.
So why? I mean, he's got a year left on his deal after this season.
Yeah.
Why now? Why is it? Is it because his value is at its absolute highest? Is that the logic that Danny Briere and the Flyers brain trust is going with?
I guess it's a combination of things. So I would say that his value is probably higher even a year ago, and there was some talk that he could have gotten a first-round pick from the Rangers at the deadline last year and didn't take it. And I think it was because they really do value what he brings to that locker room. I mean, he's been the de facto leader. I know Sean Couturier is the captain, but you got to remember Couturier missed almost 2 full seasons, and it was Scott Lawton who kind of kept things together in that locker room during that time. So they really valued that. And you know how it is in hockey. Like, there's a lot that goes into intangibles in hockey that maybe doesn't go into it in other sports as much. And they value that more in that room. And so therefore they didn't move him. But now with 1 year left, you have a couple of guys coming who can replace him. You've seen Noah Cates take a really big step forward for the Flyers this year, kind of in that role that Scott Lawton used to play. You have the young kid Jet Luchenko coming. He may play in a handful of games at the end of the season once his junior season in Guelph is over. Kind of can fill that role as well. And I think that Danny feels comfortable now knowing that he's got the players in the system or on the team already who can fill the void and replace him. So now would be the time, and you could probably get more value for him now because he's got an extra year on that contract, as opposed to waiting till next year at the deadline where it's just, he's a free agent to be.
So you've talked about his leadership, which is, evident given what you were just saying about him keeping the locker room together. In terms of his on-ice performance, I know people in Winnipeg are very interested to buy him. What does he bring in terms of his on-ice game that people can sort of tangibly say this is an asset that would help our squad?
Well, first and foremost, his versatility. He can play all three positions and he can move up and down the lineup. I mean, he doesn't hurt you as a fill-in higher up the lineup. He's certainly a bottom six guy on the regular, but he can move up in a time of need. But he's one of the best penalty killers in the NHL. If you remember last year, the Flyers had what they called it the power kill, because him and Travis Konechny together were leading the league in shorthanded goals because they're very opportunistic. So he's certainly a very, very good penalty killer. He's solid in the faceoff dot. He's not excellent, but he's solid there if you need him. And he's a leadership type, a veteran leadership type. He's a glue guy. And a lot of teams, when you're competing for a Stanley Cup, that's what you're looking for, right? You're looking to add that little element that's going to be there that is going to go through a brick wall for your team. And it may not be the best player, but those big trades that are the best players, those are the ones that don't always work out. It's usually these smaller deals that make a difference between winning and losing a championship. And I think a lot of teams value what Scott Lawton brings.
Anthony, just getting away from trade deadline targets for a second, because I'm pretty sure one of us is going to ask you about Rasmus Ristolainen, another guy. I mean, I don't know what it is this year, but I mean, there's a lot of Flyers that are rumored to be coming to Winnipeg. Maybe it's because of our delicious restaurants. I'm not sure. Maybe it's because of a legal curve. I have no idea. But
Anthony's been talking us up to the guys as well.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Happening.
That's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to ask you about the Boko Omama hit on Garnett Hathaway. I mean, I was personally shocked that he wasn't suspended. And I think John Tortorella, this isn't verbatim, but he said something like, this is one of the dirtiest hits I've seen in a while. And I mean, obviously Hathaway is not a top point producer. He's a tough guy. He's a guy that provides physicality. He can chip in a little bit of goals. I think he's got 8 goals this year. But what was your reaction? What was the reaction amongst Flyers fans? Because I mean, I'm not sure how long Hathaway is going to be out, but to me that looked like, I don't know, at least a 2 or 3 game suspension. For those who haven't seen it, it was a hit to the head. Omama is more of a kind of career minor league guy. Let's be honest, he's a tough guy, racks up the penalty minutes. But I digress. What is your take on that whole situation?
Well, I mean, the first thing you ask is what was the Philadelphia fans' reaction? And I'm going to say, what do you think the reaction was? I mean, of course, they overreacted and they thought it was the worst thing that's ever happened to any Flyers player ever. I mean, if you go on Twitter, it was worse than Lindros getting hit by Scott Stevens in the conference finals, right? I mean, that's how bad it was. I thought it was a bad hit. I thought it was suspension worthy. Do I think it was completely targeted? No, but I think it's one of those ones that could have been avoided. And yes, I kind of thought the same thing as you, Ezzy. I kind of thought, yeah, that's probably going to land this kid a few games, 2 to 3. And really, a lot of times they don't dole out that justice until they get the report from the injured player and say, how long is he going to be out? A lot of times they try to equate the suspension with the severity of the injury or the concussion, if it's a concussion, whatever. I think that I'm a little surprised that nothing has happened in that regard.
So Anthony, got to ask you, as he mentioned it, Rasmus Ristolainen, maybe a Travis Sanheim, guy from good old Manitoba boy. But is it open season in Philadelphia? Like, is that kind of the mindset right now, or is it more targeted?
No, I think it's more targeted. And the funny thing is, everybody's talking about Ristolainen. I've been talking about Ristolainen for a while, and I kind of thought maybe a month and a half ago that he was an automatic to get traded here at the deadline. Because he's that rare right-hand shot defenseman, he has a heavier game, which plays well in the postseason. And he's been so consistent for the Flyers this year. Even it goes back to last year, but he got injured, and so you only saw it for a short stint last year. But for the entire season, he's been really, really good. That being said, the Flyers don't have that, like they do for Lawton. They don't have that replacement for him in place. And I think John Tortorella said it best. He said, "You trade Rasmus Ristolainen on Friday, on Saturday, you're like, oh geez, who's filling that spot, right?" And they don't have that yet. And because he's got some term left on his contract, I would not be surprised if the Flyers held on to Rasmus Ristolainen and looked to potentially move him next year if they have somebody ready at that point. They've got a couple of kids that are coming that they like that are both on the right side. Well, one's on the right, the Helge Grans, right, who they got in a trade last year. And that was part of the Provorov trade. He had a cup of coffee earlier this year. They kind of like him, and he's developing in the AHL, but he's not quite ready to fill into that role. And then, of course, their top defensive prospect is Oliver Bonk, who's in London. Spencer Gill is another one that they really like a lot. He's a bigger guy. They want to keep size on defense. They're a very small defensive unit when you take Ristolainen out of the mix. So I wouldn't be surprised if he does not get traded, and at least not now, maybe next year at this point, but not right now.
Well, along those lines, Anthony, I want to read paraphrase what Frank Saravelli, all of our friends, said about Ristolainen, saying that the Flyers and Tortorella have raved about the improvements in his game over this time last year, but the rest of the league is maybe more skeptical about that. How would you say that his game has changed or improved or whatevered over the last 12 months or so?
Well, so what I think is his game, he's got a much more consistent stick. Sticks on pucks, I think, is better. I think his first pass out of the zone is better. His decision-making is better as far as when to go for the physical hit, the big hit, and when to kind of sit back and play in his end. Assistant coach Bradshaw has been just a mentor in a lot of ways for him to really kind of turn him into a better player. But I can understand why the feeling around the league is not the same, because the Flyers are using him in a top 4 role. Well, if he gets traded to another team that's a Stanley Cup contender, it's very likely to be as a third pair defenseman. And so when you look at that contract and you got it's $5.1 million for the next 3 years, and you sit there and say, well, do you really want to pay that for a third pair guy? Probably not. It's probably still a little bit too rich for Stanley Cup contending teams, which is why the offers aren't what Danny Briere has wanted to get to this point. So I think that as you get closer to the end of that contract, once the salary cap goes up, and that number starts to become a more palatable number for a third pair guy on a championship team, then I think the value will be better for him. But right now, I'm not certain it's where Danny Briere and the Flyers want it to be.
Okay, we'll let you go on this one because we know you have lunch reservations coming up in about 10 minutes. I'm not going to ask where you're going, just in case the paparazzi are going to follow you. But, the Jets and the Flyers twice in the next real 5 days or so tonight, and then Thursday in Philly. We haven't seen the Flyers much this year. They're not really a playoff threat. What should people be watching for when they look at the Flyers? We know Matvei Michkov has been on a heater as of late. He's one of those young up-and-coming players. What should our audience sort of monitor when the Flyers are at their peak this season? Yeah,
so the Flyers' strengths are the way they play defense in their own end. They really close up the middle. They limit opportunities. They're really committed to their structure. And so they're a hard team to play against. And then they have some young talent that is, has peaks and valleys. Mishkov certainly won. I mean, I would think that it's either going to be him or Macklin Celebrini who ends up winning the Calder this year. They're both having really nice rookie seasons. Owen Tippett has really, since he's come back from his injury, has played at a much higher level. Konechny's having his best season. So they have some guys that can do some things, but they're not a consistent enough offensive team. So they're just going to try and grind you, and they're going to be a hard team to play against. Their weakness is in goal, although Sam Erson's been good since the holidays, but he's, again, a little bit inconsistent, save percentage under 900. They don't have a real backup. Fedotov's not that nothing special. there. So I think that that's what keeps them from being a real playoff contender, is that they don't have enough offense and they don't have goaltending. But I think that they're in a lot of games. They don't get blown out. They're in every game, and they make it tough on you. Typical John Tortorella team, right? And so that's what you have to look forward to. And the fact that you're facing them twice in 5 days, I think that makes it a little bit of a challenge. Winnipeg is certainly one of the top 2 teams in the league regular season this year, and I would tell you that I think the Flyers probably get one of these 2 against them, just because of the way they play and doing so close together. I think there's a real chance for there to be a nice split between these 2 teams this week.
Anthony Sanfilipo is a longtime friend of this program. He covers the Flyers for On Pattison. Anthony, more than anything else, congratulations on getting down from the lamppost after the Eagles won the Super Bowl. That's the most impressive part, that you were able to scurry up and then scurry back down.
Yeah, I did a good job with that, right? I found the one light pole that was not greased in Philadelphia, so it was good.
Anthony, thanks buddy. Have a great time in New York. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
All right, boys. Talk to you soon.
Bon appetit, Anthony.
Thank you.
Good friend of ours. He's been a good friend of ours for many years, and he covers the Flyers like nobody else. Anthony Sanfilipo.
What was it? It was the Courier Online.
Delaware County Daily Times.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's where we first were introduced to Anthony. Delaware County, of course, being in the Pennsylvania region. Given the
boys, we have to make our way back. It's been 11 years since our trip to Philadelphia, where we obviously went up the steps. The rocky steps, and Drew was hit in the head with a baseball.
It's true. My lip is finally healing. So that's
he wasn't
exciting.
hit in the head by the baseball. He was hit in the head by it was
ricochet.
It was the ricochet. No, did the ball actually make contact with you? I thought it was that I thought it was the table. I thought it's not the table. I thought it was that you slammed your head into the cement. I didn't realize the ball
hit off. The ball hit off the chair behind me, and as I turned to.
Drew, that Chase Utley hit that ball like 200 meters in the air. How are you still how are you alive? Even on the ricochet, it sounded like when that ball. And for folks who don't know what we're talking about, in 2014 when we were at the draft in Philly, we went to see a Phillies game, and in the 14th inning, Ezzy can't first person this story because Esley and Hustler went for beers because they
we were across the street at Xfinity Live.
They stopped serving beer at Citizens Bank Park where the Phillies play. So Ezzy and Huss had to leave the game despite it being in the 14th inning.
Tie game they left 5 innings earlier because
they left in the 9th inning.
They left in the 9th, but the game went to the 14th inning, and then Chase Utley hit a ball, and I'm no word of a lie. It was like a million miles in the air, and that's a bit of an exaggeration, I guess. And when the ball came down, it sounded. Originally, I was like, "Oh, no chance, I'm out." and I'm not joking. It hit, and it sounded like a bomb went off when it made contact with the metal or aluminum chair, whatever they are, the seating in the where we were, and then Drew got Drew went for it. Credit Drew. Drew scurried. He scurried as he.
And also there's a picture that exists. Like we got
Dave
a picture
has
with
the picture. We know
somebody has that on their phone. That picture.
Yeah, Dave has the picture at his fingertips at all times of the guy who caught the ball and my lip being swollen after catching the ball on the ricochet. That's what happened there. Dave definitely has the photo, and he'll bring it momentarily here to us here on the program because
it was an awesome time. Phillies, for anybody that hasn't gone, Philly is. I mean, there's historically, obviously, Philadelphia is an amazing city, but just for the sports alone. I mean, you've got the Eagles and the Phillies and the Flyers all in that little area. It's just so good.
And I got to say, it made me feel much like home in Winnipeg when I went around the corner to try and get a cheesesteak, but a murder had just happened. So I had to go take the long route to getting my cheesesteak. That felt me.
Actually, was there an actual? There you go.
Yeah, there you go. That's the guy who caught the ball, and that's where the ball hit me in the face. And that's when I briefly still had a little bit of hair left. I was holding on to the vestiges of a once great society on the top of my head there.
Drew, you look like you're like 24 years old there.
Well, I would have been, 30?
And that's Drew's back sweat for those who are curious.
Jeez, Dave. Okay, Ginsburg, you're leaving, aren't you?
Yes. I have a birthday party to attend to, so I'm going to duck out here a little bit early, but keep it going, boys. Have a good rest of the show.
We were a younger looking group back then. It's a little dark.
Yeah,
a little dark. Philly Dan's in the picture. Huss is in the picture. Huss has a lot more hair. Holy.
Okay, Dave, stop showing pictures. We'll do
picture time is over.
After. Ezzy, have a good birthday party. We'll see you for the post game show. Dave and I will keep it coming with the Jets talk on the other side of the break. Saturday morning, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We continue and talk about the Jets.
We want to thank you
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now, you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
Commercial free from here until the end of the program. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Manouk. The show is brought to you by our friends at Play Now. Learn to bet with Play Now, the official betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets. Sign up and get up to $250 in bonus bets. Conditions apply. 18 plus. Enjoy responsibly. I'll say something similar later on tonight with the Illegal Curve post-game show following the Jets and the Philadelphia Flyers. Post-game should be right around that 8:45 or so time frame. And then on Thursday night, the rematch between the Jets and the Flyers. We'll see us at Boston Pizza on Taylor Avenue for another edition of the Illegal Curve watch party and live on location post-game show. So be sure to join us Thursday night. There's probably going to be a trade or two happening while we're there. So join us live to talk about the trades, talk about the Jets and the Flyers, talk about Friday's trade deadline. Tons of content coming your way here with Illegal Curve over the next weeks, months, years, millennials, decades, centuries, and so on and so on. Let me ask you this, Mr. Manouk, as we talk more about the Winnipeg Jets. We talked about Morgan Barron likely returning to the lineup tonight from all accounts. Looks like Gustav Nyquist has been traded somewhere because his equipment has been sent away from the team. So that's the.
Yeah, it's one thing to say you're going to be healthy and we're going to keep you off the ice, but when you actually take your equipment and send it somewhere else, it's usually a good sign.
And this is according to former New York Rangers and New York Islanders general manager Neil Smith. Has said that Gustav Nyquist has been traded. His equipment has been sent from the Islanders.
And LeBron just said Nashville and Minnesota.
Is it done?
No,
they said there was a complication, apparently.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyways, we'll talk. Well, once we know for sure, we'll let you guys know. It's not that big a deal. It's Gus Nyquist, and it doesn't. Well, I guess it vaguely maybe can impact the Jets if he goes to Minnesota, but we'll see. Going back to what I was asking about asking Murat about the right side versus left side question, and how we've all assumed that it's upgrade for Logan Stanley. That's upgrade for Logan Stanley. Part of me wonders if that's maybe cart before the horse a little bit. I mean, I think it should be upgrade for Logan Stanley, but the team and Scott Arniel clearly like the size that he brings on the back end.
Right.
Not that, I mean, I just...
You're not replacing, like, you're not going to replace Logan Stanley with a 5'11" defenseman.
I would not think so. No, I think the Jets certainly would acknowledge they need some bulk on the back end there. I mean, Logan Stanley is not a physical defenseman despite his size. Anybody who says that really isn't watching the Winnipeg Jets. They're making an assumption that based on the fact he's tall, he's physical, just like Tyler Myers was not physical despite his height when he was a member.
Although Stanley has more bulk than Myers, but sure.
Yes.
Your point is right. He's not like, don't get me wrong. Like, we saw it last game where he got into it. He will do it. The game
in Ottawa when he dropped the gloves after the questionable hit.
Yeah.
I mean, I just, part of me wonders that if the Jets don't like the asking price for a left side defenseman, and I say this knowing that right side defensemen are usually more coveted than left side defensemen, that I wonder if the Jets maybe pivot and try to upgrade on Colin Miller rather than upgrading on Logan Stanley and trying to go with sort of two big trees on your third pairing on the back end. I mean, I'm just speculating here, just based a little bit off of what Murat wrote in his column. No, I don't have any particular insight into a change of philosophy, but I do wonder if that is maybe something that has crossed the minds of the Winnipeg Jets brain trust 6 days away from the trade deadline.
I mean, look, the only thing that I would suggest that why there's some validity to what you're saying is because Colin Miller is the guy who's consistently out of the lineup when need be. And instead, now I think there's method to that madness. I think there's a reason for it. Colin Miller has a lot of playoff experience, right? He's gone on some playoff runs, as we know. So, I mean, like, I think, again, I could be wrong, Drew, because like I said, just kind of looking at the way he's been used this year, and when you see him out of the lineup somewhat inexplicably, but he again did a long playoff run with in the AHL with Manchester. He did a long playoff run with the Golden Knights in 17-18. Jets fans will remember that one. Didn't end well for Vegas, but he was in 20 games that year, and of course he did 10 games with the Dallas Stars a few years back. So Colin Miller has a lot of playoff experience, especially for that third pairing, and he's been consistent. And I just think that the reason why I think they're doing that is because I think they know that if he's out of the lineup, it's not going to kill him. He's enough of a professional. You see it with a lot of teams. Like don't get me wrong, the Oilers, and look, they've lost 5 in a row, right? And people are like, I mean, people are losing their mind. And the whole, it's funny, they're still a top team in the Pacific, but yet if you read the what's going on social media, it's as if they constructed the worst roster ever, and everything is ending.
The problem there right now is their goaltending.
No, of course. Yeah. John Gibson, your name is, you put on those Oilers colors, but anyways, I just think that it's what I'm getting at is I don't know that those guys are going at 100%. And I think that certain guys know how to ramp up. Collectively as a group, you can't just, okay, it's the playoffs, here we go. And we've heard that. But I also think that teams any team that tells you that they're going 100% hasn't been there. I think that
they're not flipping the switch, but they're pacing themselves.
Does anybody think the Florida
marathon runner in training?
Yeah. Does anybody think the Florida Panthers are going at 100%? They're not. They've won the Stanley Cup. They know what it takes to what they do, what the levels they need to achieve. And I'm just saying, I don't think, even though the Oilers haven't won the Stanley Cup, I think that they know what it takes to get into the playoffs and go on a deep run. And I'm just saying that I think the guy like Colin Miller, it's an interesting question, Drew. I think at the end of the day, this team needs that upgrade. I think they need the upgrade in that third pairing guy. I mean, if you're not going to upgrade the top 4, and we know how, look, if you want to read some of the quotes about Dylan Samberg.
Why don't you read some of those quotes? I thought, not to put you on the spot, but I'll give you time to bring them up. What happened was Dom Lucian, who covers the NHL for The Athletic, has been banging the drum of the impact of Dylan Samberg.
Which, by the way, was an IC drum for many, many years prior to.
There's been, yes, it's
We have no musical talent, but we've been banging
it's a
that
drum
drum.
that's been played by a few different people as of late. Our buddy Connor Harabchuk in his day after notes often talks about Dylan Sandberg and his impact. You can get those after the games on illegalcurve.com, of course. But Dylan Sandberg and his impact and his influence and the Jets' incredible numbers with him in the lineup are beginning to sort of gather attention of the more casual hockey fan. So why don't you now, with that as the premise and the that being the preface, why don't you mention what Dom had to say about Dylan Sandberg?
Well, he just said they have one of the best defensemen in the world. Now, he was talking about Josh Morrissey, of course, in that comment. And then he said they have Dylan Sandberg, who is amazing. I think people don't see Dylan Sandberg as a true number 2 defenseman. He absolutely is that. And of course, Dom measures all the intangibles, or not, I guess they're not intangibles or tangibles, but the analytics.
Numbers.
And so he'll give you the kind of what's happening. And you folks, when Dylan Sandberg was out of the lineup, look at the chaos in this lineup. We know how important he is to the Jets. And that's why we have been banging the drum to get him signed to a long-term deal, because you need that player. And we knew that he was going to be that player. And folks ask about Elias Salamonson. I don't think he's that player yet, but I call him the right shot Dylan Sandberg. He's got that vein. He's actually I actually think he's a little bit nastier. He plays a little more edge than Dylan Sandberg did from what I've seen in the AHL. So, I mean, that's a reason also, Drew, why I'm not so certain you're worried about that right side, because I think you have a ready-made guy who can replace Colin Miller, maybe even not necessarily next year, but maybe platoon with him potentially, or in 2 years' time, you got Elias Salamonson who can come in and kind of be that. And then eventually you hope take that spot from Dylan DeMello when he starts to, as Murat was talking about, age out. And then you've got Salamonson who can potentially be that in that top pairing. That's projecting. We're projecting right now. You're talking about what we're focused on right now, which is whether it's a right or left side of the D. To me, I definitely think it's a left side guy, because look, Logan Stanley has played a lot of hockey games. He has been in the lineup. He's not coming out of the lineup right now. Now, again, part of my position, which I got pilloried a little bit from the folks in the chat, because everybody's like, you know what you've got. But at the end of the day, Logan Stanley, the most games he's ever played in an NHL season was 58. That was back in 21-22. Then he played 19. Then he played 25. Now he's played 46 games for the Winnipeg Jets. You can argue the Jets knew what they had in Logan Stanley before. I think that Scott Arniel wanted to make that decision within his system, and that's his prerogative as a coach. And you can say that he's got blinders on. You can say this. I think that the upgrade has to be someone like, it was funny. I put the comment up from Frosty Drew about the Jamie Oleksiak, because, he just basically brings the exact same size. Right. The only problem is he's a much more complete player than Logan Stanley. And if you could
better than Logan Stanley.
Well, not only that, but just think about the rights. Just think about the left side of the Jets defense. If you've got Oleksiak, you've got Morrissey, Sandberg, Oleksiak.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty freaking good left side of the D. It is. I mean, that's a. I'm not saying it's flawless. I'm not saying it's without potential for mistakes. But I don't know. Remember, I mean, the other thing you're taking into consideration, and the one thing that everybody has to remember, because you're not just potentially replacing Logan Stanley. You're potentially replacing a guy who has to be able to move up in the lineup, which is why I said, if you get a guy who, like when I referenced Alex Tuck, for example, well, as he brought up Tuck, but when I'm saying, if you have Alex Tuck and you put him into the third line for Mason Appleton, let's say, and there's an injury to player X,
you bring him up.
He can move up and it's not going to be a problem. The problem for this Jets team is you could hide a guy on the third pair, but God forbid one of those guys in the top 4 get knocked out. How are you going to promote someone? We already saw with Hayden. We saw with Logan Stanley is not capable of doing it. Hayden Fleury is not capable of doing it. Like, they can do it in a game. Right. I don't think they can sustain it for a series.
No.
And again, like I said, we know how impactful anytime you lose a superstar it can be, or a really impactful, really important player. But you have to have someone who's going to have the versatility, who can give you, a guy gets knocked out for 2 or 3 games. Okay, he's not going to be as impactful, but it's not going to be, on the positive end, it's not going to be as significant as but it's not going to be as negative. Right. And that's why so that's why I'm saying you're not just replacing potentially Logan Stanley 1-for-1. You're also thinking, can this player jump up if need be and take over? And if, I don't want to start injecting ideas as to what could happen, but I'm just saying you have to be able to account for that.
you want to make sure that you have a built-in a somewhat credible option in a worst case scenario is what you're saying. I mean, and that's I think a very valid comment that you make. And we saw, and look, most teams in this league can't go out and have a third pairing guy replace a top 4 guy. It's just not something that is easily done. It's not something that's readily done. I think you're more likely to be able to do it with a forward coming up and playing in an elevated role than on the back end. But no team wants to experience that. We know that it usually takes 10 defensemen to get through the Stanley Cup playoffs and everything else. So again, I would not be shocked if it ends up being that the Jets are more focused on the back end than they are up front when it comes to this trade deadline, which is now 6 days away. That said, I think it's worth pointing out and it's worth highlighting what you reported earlier this week is that Parker Ford, another guy that the Jets have brought up from the Moose and has played for the Jets when they've had injury troubles, is also out long-term. We know that Nikita Chibrikov's season is over and that he came up and played some games when the Jets needed him. But now another guy who is in that depth forward organizational role is also out of the lineup for the Manitoba Moose. And you say it's not a short-term injury that Parker Ford suffered.
No, I reported that yesterday. That Parker Ford, he's out with an upper body injury that he sustained in a game against Milwaukee to end the homestand before
the game last on Louis Riel Day. Is that right? The Monday?
No, it was the Sunday game. I think he got injured. Okay. Wasn't it the Sunday game? Yeah, it was the one they came back and they won the game in the last 30 seconds. I think it was the Sunday game, if I recall correctly. Right. And so he's missed 4 straight games. Yeah, I think at that point when I reported it, because yesterday was the fifth game. So he missed 5 games, but he is out long term. That's what I've been informed. So yeah, you're right, Drew. That just eliminates, along with Nikita Chibrikov, some of that forward depth that you were going to be able to look. The Moose are not making the playoffs. Their job is a little it's a little too tall a task to try and come back from where they put themselves, especially when again, like they go on little mini runs, but they need to do the longest of long runs. So they were unable to do that yesterday in Belleville. And yeah, so you will get some augmentation. You'll get. I mean, if you want to talk about black aces, you're going to have Jared Anderson Dolan. You're going to have Axel Jonsson-Fjällby. You're going to have. Yeah, you have Dom Toninato, you'll have Brad Lambert. So you've got 4 depth forwards who all have varying degrees. But again, those are guys who are really just your 4th line replacements.
And it takes a big hit to your 4th line, because the Jets' 4th line has been something that something that Scott Arniel's been able to throw over the boards and not have to worry too much about. It's not like when they could only play 5 minutes a game under Paul Maurice. It's a better 4th line. The depth is better on the 4th line now, and they can get up to 8, 9, 10 minutes. If you're throwing, with all due respect, if you're throwing Jonsson-Fjällby or Tony Nato or Mason Shaw or Anderson Dolan, and you're asking them to play, close to double digit in minutes on the 4th line for the Jets, they're not going to be able to play that role come playoff time.
No, I mean, I don't disagree, but I mean, at the same point, right now you've got 13, like who your top 13 are,
no question.
And so again, will the Jets add a forward? I believe they will. So really, you're going to have 14. And I don't think that those guys, I mean, look, people ask me, I had someone ask me about Axel Jonsson-Fjällby yesterday, and his game doesn't translate in the AHL. It just doesn't work. He just doesn't translate in the AHL. He's fine in the NHL. And to be honest with you, he can kill penalties and do some things. I'm just saying, if you needed him, I'm not saying that you're going to win a series you're not going to win the Stanley Cup with Axel Jonsson-Fjällby on your first line, Drew. But I'm just saying that, you have to be able to the whole point is that this team cannot fall because one player or 2 players aren't in the lineup. If that's the case, then you're a paper dragon. You really are, or a paper tiger, whatever the expression is. I think it's paper tiger, but paper dragon.
But a paper dragon would probably work just the same way. I mean, the tiger is probably going to rip the paper. The dragon's going to burn the paper. But
exactly.
Either way, I do appreciate your butchering of metaphors every now and then.
I do tend to do it. But anyways, the point I'm making though is that you'll see probably a depth add in that regard. Someone who can play up and down. I mean, don't get me wrong. If they can get an Alex Tuck, if they can make that swing out of Buffalo, go for it. Do it. It would absolutely make this Jets team better. And to the point you're making, it pushes these guys down, because ultimately this Jets team doesn't have faith, obviously, in Ville Heinola. Despite what Scott O'Neill being his biggest fan, he's played him 11 times this year, or whatever the number is. It's not a lot. 15 games. I don't. Has he even played 15 games this year? What's his?
I'd have to look at. Hang on, let me look it up. It's whatever it is. It's clear that the writing's on the wall there in terms of him as a member of the Winnipeg Jets.
But and I also think that he doesn't. Again, and so I'm just saying. And then
17 games this year.
17 games. There you go. So Ville Heinola has played 17 games. Actually seems high, to be honest. I'm a little surprised he's played that many. But anyways, and then it's also funny because last year the back end didn't get injured, so they didn't need to use any of their guys other than I think with illness. But yeah, I mean, this conversation has devolved and it's gone all over the place. But I mean, at the same time, I think that you have to view it as and don't get me wrong. I think they'll recall Salamonson to get him that experience up in the NHL as a Black Ace. I don't know that someone asked in the chat, I don't think he's ready to be a player for the Jets just yet. We had Vicious, Drew. You should have posted Vicious's comment because very nice of Vicious to throw some money the legal curve way. So we should put that one up. Yes. Travis Sanheim. Yeah. Well, from Elkhorn, Manitoba, one of my favorite places in our province. So there's another big boy. We did ask Anthony Sanfilipo. He didn't mention that Sanheim is someone who's on the block. And to the point that we also, Drew, can you put that one up from Vicious again?
Yeah. The one about Dylan Coughlin.
Yeah. Because Dylan Coughlin, when we're doing injury updates, I should mention Dylan Coughlin right now, even though he does have 8 goals in 18 games, I wouldn't say he's big. He can play with a little bit of edge though, for sure. And he's definitely a more than capable right side guy. I think he has shown that he's when he's played the games, he's looked good. And that's why I think they were very concerned about putting him on waivers because of, what they see in him as a, let's put it this way. If the Jets need a right shot defenseman, they're going to put Dylan Coughlin in before Logan Stanley on the opposite side. I mean, watch my words.
You mean for anything? I'm
talking about in the playoffs. I'm not talking about
right. You're saying because Coughlin is now, of course, with the Moose.
Yeah.
So if they were to call him up and let's say they wanted to play him on Thursday against the Predators, when they moved Stanley to the right side, it would have required the roster juggling, and they would have lost him on waivers. Trying to get him back down. There would have been too many moving pieces at that point in time. Whereas come playoff time, if you need a right side guy, there's no roster limits. You just got to be, you have to be salary cap compliant. After Friday, you can have a roster of 27, 28, 29 guys,
right?
As long as you're salary cap compliant. And then come playoff time, it doesn't matter about the salary cap whatsoever. So they've managed to sort of tiptoe through the raindrops when it comes to Dylan Coughlin and his waiver status this season. And clearly at this point in time, they're going to make it all the way through to the period of the season where you no longer have to worry about waivers.
Yeah, and the thing I would mention about Coughlin is he's not in the lineup right now. He is out day-to-day with a minor issue, so he hasn't played he was supposed to play the game, the first Belleville game on Wednesday. He was a late scratch, but he was listed as part of the roster, and then he was a late scratch, so something must have happened. And
it's minor from all counts?
Yeah, no, I've been told it's day-to-day. So Coughlin wouldn't even be an option right now anyways for the Jets. Right. But yeah, I mean, like you said, Drew, they're not – like the big thing for Winnipeg, what Kevin Cheveldayoff, people say we don't have any idea what he's going to do. You're absolutely right. We really don't. We don't know what sort of moves. We know we get whispers, but ultimately, at the end of the day, one thing we've seen is that he doesn't want to do anything that's going to cost him a roster player right now. And so folks can be like, who cares about Ville Heinola? Clearly, Kevin Cheveldayoff does, because otherwise, if he didn't care, he would have tried to put him on waivers and send him down to the Moose.
Well, but Ville Heinola isn't going to have a big trade value. I mean, we've talked
about
he's
got no trade value right now.
I was being a little bit nicer than you are, but you're right. I mean, given the limited action, given the limited exposure, given the lack of performance, and whether that's due to not having the opportunity or due to just not being able to perform to that level, there's not a lot of demand for Ville Heinola league wide. So,
other than potential, and again, look at Declan Chisholm with Minnesota, right? They took him, they've used him quite a bit. I think he's actually, I think he's been a healthy scratch a little bit, but the fact of the matter is, guys, it's a no-brainer to take a guy off of weight. How many times have the Jets done it? Have the Jets taken a player
off waivers? It doesn't cost you much.
It doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously literally there's a cost, but I mean, it's a very marginal one to see. Okay, we'll test him. I mean, look at Travis Dermott. The Oilers put him on waivers. Minnesota picked him up. They had him for a while, put him back on waivers. The Oilers reclaimed him.
there's a reason why guys go on waivers. By and large, it's because they're not usually, key contributing members, of teams. There's always exceptions. We know that. Marty St. Louis comes to mind, of a guy who, struck lightning in a bottle and then turned his entire career around. And the Jets have been victimized a little bit as of late with Chisholm and Kovacevic.
Well, Kovacevic is one that I lament that one all the time for the number one reason, because he wanted to sit down roots in this community.
Right.
He was with someone from here. He would have been a long-term fit on that right side. 6'4", 6'5", can skate, and they love him in New Jersey. So for all the people who poo-pooed it and said, well, it's not that big a loss, well, he's formed a pretty important role in New Jersey. And, that one was a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, and that was a mistake that the Jets, you're right, the Jets absolutely erred on that one in losing him for nothing. But I mean, for the most part, guys that are on waivers, you're always excited about the transaction. There's a guy on waivers. But
remember when the Jets got Keaton Ellerby and everybody's like, oh, he's a former first-round pick. It's like
the Jets. Look at the guys who the Jets have picked up on waivers over the years who haven't turned into contributors because they're on waivers. I mean, there's a reason why teams let them go for next to nothing, or the rules dictate that a guy gets that opportunity to go on waivers. I think it was one of the things that there was an article on The Athletic this past week. I think that agents were saying that waivers should be at an earlier stage in players' careers so that guys don't just sit there languishing. I mean, if you're Ville Heinola, you would say without that you've been languishing for the last number of years within the Jets organization. Too good that they don't want to lose you for nothing, but not good enough to crack the lineup means you get a lot of time in the press box with us chuckles eating popcorn. It's not how you want your career to develop at that point in time. And as a result, you probably stagnate, and it's hard to bounce back from that. I mean, Sami Niku, if you want to look back at other guys, there's been plenty of names, and whether or not they would have, circumstances are a key part of life that, if you'd been given the opportunity, if situation had been a little bit different, maybe things turn out differently for all sorts of players up and down the NHL, not strictly a Winnipeg thing, but that's the reality of the rules of the league and everything else. So if you want to change that, talk to your agent, talk to your players association, and see about going about it that way. It's different, than that's just the reality of having these rules about it. Going back to with the Winnipeg Jets, though, as we sit here, 6 days away, from the trade deadline, it does seem like Friday is going to be the day for the Winnipeg Jets. They're going to probably keep a very similar roster, barring injury, between now and Thursday. And then Friday, when you have the New Jersey Devils, that's when you're going to probably see the action pick up from the Jets' perspective. Mike McIntyre said that on the show last week, and it makes a lot of sense just given the way the Jets are, given their reluctance to lose any of the players that they have on their team, on their active roster at the moment.
Tikona Pauly,
he's on the Ty Bauer train. We know that, and he's paying to get his comments put up there so that he can speak highly about his buddy Ty Bauer.
Well, I mean, look, I understand it. Tyrell's he's a personal favorite of Tikona Pauly. Wish Tikona Pauly a happy birthday. Not many guys can say that, but we wish Tikona Pauly a happy birthday as well. Hopefully it had as big an impact as Tyrell Bauer doing it through me to Tikona Pauly, but it's he adds that physical edge. I mean, let's put it this way. If you want to talk about no nonsense, like when guys see him, there was a perfect example in yesterday's Moose game in Belleville where he kind of got this scrum was kind of happening and all of a sudden Tyrell kind of showed up. And I mean, him and Matt Rempe, best friends, grew up in Alberta together, trained together. So, and they train not just as hockey players, but they do some other training as well. So he's definitely got fighting down. But of course, hockey is more than just about fighting and being tough. But he is definitely tough, and he definitely knows how to fight. So we'll see. I mean, that'll be the interesting thing down the stretch to watch for, Drew, is which of the prospects do get some games. And Elias Salamonson, of course, he's having an impact now that he's back from his upper body injury. So I expect him, of course, to be in the lineup. Not soon. We're still only game 61 tonight, but when it gets into the 70s, I would suspect that you're going to see some of these guys. And again, the Jets would do well for a couple of reasons. One, give these guys a taste of regular season action. Let them make their NHL debuts. Goes a long, long way. And two, it gives your other guys a night off here and there. And I think that's smart also down the stretch.
Well, I mean, that's why you call up a guy like Jared Anderson-Dolan. I know you want the insurance when you're on the road trip and everything else, but also you're rewarding him for, going through the season with the Moose, which has certainly been a struggle of a season. So he gets to come up and play and get an NHL paycheck for a couple days. He gets to travel the good life for a couple days, the charters and the fancy per diems, and then not doing the Belleville, Laval, Toronto run that the Moose are doing. So guys appreciate that. Veteran guys, you talk about, we know the drawbacks and the negativity that surrounds Winnipeg, but at the same time, you also hear players do say that the organization does the little things, the right things that are the little things that resonate that a lot of other organizations maybe don't do. And that's a similar example to that. You give a guy a little bit of a boost. He doesn't get into the game, but he gets a little bit of some pocket money at that point in time and things of that nature. And that does it does matter to him, and it does matter to everyone else, sort of just saying, hey, yeah, you did right by a veteran guy who's been trying to do right by you in a bad situation with the Moose all season long.
Yeah, and those Moose are going to close out their homestand. We won't do a full Moose minute here, Drew, but the Moose are going to close out their road trip, 6-game road trip this afternoon in Toronto. They beat Toronto, came back and won in OT. Captain Dominic Toninato got the OT winner in Toronto. Then the next game also got the OT winner in Belleville. So he had back-to-back OT winners, which according to Daniel Fink had never happened before for the Moose, the back-to-back winners. So the Jets made history and the Moose made history. And last one, I should say, Chaz Lucius, very unusual situation for him. Of course, we knew that they were managing him with his recovery from last year, from his surgery that took him out for last season, Jets 2021 first rounder. And so we knew he was playing every other game. Then he took off a bunch of games to kind of get ready to go. And then it was like he was ready to go and then didn't stop. And so Chaz Lucius went 21 straight games for the Manitoba Moose. So that was significant. He was able to get into a lot of games. And then, hold on one second. Never mind. I actually got some fresh Moose news to break on the show, actually. Although it's just an ATO signing someone out of the University of Calgary. I'll get that to you guys in a moment. But the fact of the matter is that, Chaz Lucius he played 21 straight games and you're like, okay, this is great. He's finally kind of back in business. Then he missed a couple games early February, played February 9th, and then he's missed the last 8. So he's dealing with a medical condition. We're not exactly certain because, unfortunately for me, I was out of town. Then the Moose have been out of town. They're back this week. So I'm going to try and get a little more insight. But to break it all down, Parker Ford, he's out long-term. They're not ready to say he's done for the season, but he's out long-term. There's only 6 weeks left. So, you can kind of connect the dots there. And Chaz Lucius, I don't know his status. I'll try and get more on this week when I talk to the Moose. And like I said, Dylan Coughlin, day-to-day, we'll see if he plays in Toronto. So there's same old. I know you say that Chaz is a non-factor, but I got to tell you, the kid, every single person I've talked to that's in hockey disagrees with that assessment. Now, health, huge factor for him, but I can tell you right now, if his health is consistent, the kid has all the right tools to be a hockey player. So again,
big if, though, unfortunately for him.
Absolutely, but it's been a big if since before the Jets drafted him. He was injured, so it's the reason why he fell to where he fell. So ultimately, the Jets are hoping that he can get healthy, and we'll see. I mean, look, it's just they never said he's done. He's dealing with something. People get things outside of hockey. It doesn't necessarily have to be an injury. It could be sick, God forbid, but we don't know. So at the same time, we'll wait. I'm not going to speculate. I'll wait till I talk to them personally and find that information out for you.
There you go. Dave M will bring it all to us a little bit later on tonight on the Illegal Curve post-game show after the Jets and the Philadelphia Flyers. So we encourage you to join us for the post-game show right around 8:45 or so tonight. That's when we'll be back at it, talk about the Jets and the Flyers, see if there's any more deals done during the day. And of course, we'll recap the Moose and the Marlies as well. That's taking place this afternoon. Yes, one final thing you were pointing at me.
Well, I was just going to, again, I don't want to go through it because, we're about to go overtime. So I'm going to let you end the show when you want to, but again, check out the morning papers, note 4, because we have all the updates on Kieran Walton, Braden Yeager, Colby Barlow. And I will say, I know folks love, to focus on Elias Salamonson, the 2022 second rounder. He made an unbelievable save. And I say that sincerely, glove save yesterday for the Moose to prevent an empty net goal. It was hilarious. Fink was like, great save, Salamonson. So if you didn't get a chance to see it, we've got it on the Illegal Curve Instagram. And of course, I put it out on Twitter, Blue Sky, and all that other crap. So check out Elias Salamonson. He's got 4 assists in his last games. He's actually got the second most assists on the Moose after Brad Lambert, which is impressive given how much time he lost. Or it's sad, if you want to say, because the Moose, of course, have scored the least number of goals in the entire AHL. So check that out on our social media, please.
There you go. And if you
By the way, Drew, you didn't mention Warren Monroe, though. Warren gave IC a big donation as well, and you didn't mention it. So,
well, there you go. Thank you, Warren. Appreciate that. Yes, go check out Tyrell Bauer's Hockey DB photo. It's an entertaining one as well. Big thanks to everybody for joining us today on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We do appreciate it as always. If you haven't already done so, be sure to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the podcast, leave us feedback, and turn your notifications on. That way you'll be notified later tonight when we go live with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show after the Jets and the Philadelphia Flyers. IllegalCurve.com is your resource for all the latest Winnipeg Jets, Manitoba Moose news and analysis. You can turn that on, get that there all day long, all night long, all week long, all year long, all month long, and every single
including Scott O'Neill's comments from this morning, I hope.
There you go. Those will be up there soon enough as well. Big thanks to all the sponsors of our programming. Play Now, they're the title sponsor. Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club. Kevin Farley is at Rumors next week, Thursday through Saturday. Limited tickets left. Get them now. RumorsComedyClub.com. Yes, the Farley last name is a significant one in the comedy industry, so you won't want to miss Kevin Farley at Rumors next week.
I remember once watching, sorry, just quickly though, but Kevin Farley, I remember, what was it? He played a cop in something, and I was like, boy, that guy looks like Chris Farley. Then I realized, sure enough, there's a reason why he did.
It's a spitting image. Is
remember the movie where he played a cop?
I don't. I'll let you look it up, and then we can bring it up tonight on the post-game show. But it is an absolute spitting image of his brother, Chris.
Oh, Joe Dirt. Joe Dirt. And I was like, and it's funny because I just watched the movie, so I was like, I just saw it. It's fresh in my mind. Joe Dirt, which I hadn't seen in years, for the record.
There you go. Holt Dental, Boston Pizza, City Place, and of course our friends at Seagram's support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. Big thanks to Murat Ates. Big thanks to Anthony Sanfilipo. Big thanks to Ezzy Ginsberg. Big thanks to my colleague Dave Minuk. I'm your host, Drew Mandel. Until later tonight with the Illegal Curve postgame show, we remind you that if it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you a little bit later on.
Life's a garden. Dig it.